Live, interactive, and here to assist you if you need help. Dealing with addiction, mental health challenges, and more. This is Road to Recovery with your host, Yonah Budd. Only on 640 Toronto.
And good evening. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight. I will be your host this evening. My name is Yonah Budd, and we're joined in the studio with my friends Sophia and Devin, who will be taking our calls. And actually, the first segment is a call-in segment, and the way you call us is by dialing 416-870-6400 or toll-free 888-225-TALK, which is 8255. If you want to reach us during the show or after the show, please do so by emailing Road to Recovery. Just had to catch that for a second. Road to Recovery at 640toronto.com. We'd love to hear from you and share your ideas of future shows, ideas of the things we're talking about. Give me some comments. Tell me how you feel about the show in general and all that kind of stuff. Or just say hi to Sophia and Devin. They'd like to get messages too. So tonight we're talking about tainted stuff, tainted drug supply. Road to Recovery, by the way, if this is the first time joining us, it's a show about us helping each other, getting to the other side of stuff, getting through life, getting through the difficult days. You call in, we share, we talk, I share information, you share information. So it's an interactive, community-based opportunity for us to share, and we'd love to hear from you. 416-870-6400. Devin is standing by and excited to take your calls. So when I talk about tainted drugs, tainted things like that, you remember way back when, or maybe not so long ago, perhaps, where you were having a drink, at a bar or something, you were concerned about somebody putting something in your drink, your mom or your dad, if they were street proofing you at a young age, would have told you, never put your drink down, never walk away from your drink, and so on. And that's really good advice because you never know who's going to do bad things, right? People do bad things for whatever reason. Well, there's a really cool thing that Sophia just shared with me, and I'm going to share it with you tonight. Just on the drinking side alone, we're going to get into tainted drugs here in a second as well. But we're talking specifically about tainted people tainting your drinks, putting things in your drinks. So there's a new thing out. It looks like a scrunchie. I don't know if you know what a scrunchie is. It's the thing that you put in your hair to hold your hair back in a ponytail and so on. They're very cool. My granddaughter has them. I have one. My wife has. Yeah, I have one now because I haven't had my hair cut in like almost a year. But getting rid of the scrunchie, getting a haircut sometime soon. I'm digressing. Anyway, this thing you wear on your wrist, and then you order your drink at a bar or whatever, wherever you are. You take this thing off your wrist. It's got a little hidden compartment. You take it out. You spread it over the top of your drink, the cup itself. It's got a little tiny hole, enough for a straw. You can get a system that comes with a straw that you can hold in your pocket as well, collapsible straw. And that way, this thing is covered, so there's no way anybody can put anything into your drink. It's elasticized bottom, and you then take that, stick it in your pocket, put it on your wrist or whatever, take it home, wash it, and use it the next time. That keeps the bad guys out of your drink. So, have you ever been to a party, had the brownie that looked delicious, the homemade brownie that Mary brought or Jessica's, daughter or sister made for you, and you took a bite of it, and then in a little while you started to feel kind of really weird. Went up to your host and you go like, I just had one of those brownies a little bit ago and I'm feeling really weird. And she goes, oh my God, you didn't. You look at her and go, yeah, I did. What do you mean I didn't? Oh, God, you have the wrong brownies. Those are the weed brownies. Oh, my gosh, they shouldn't have been on the table. And then you're now, have ingested a bunch of THC in your system, and you now got to work it through, let your system work it through and come out the other side. Not such a big deal for a lot of people, but for some people it could be really, really difficult to manage if you don't know that it's coming. So too with any kind of laced drug, any kind of drug that's got stuff in it that you don't expect. It's one thing to mix drugs. I've been doing this for a really long time. Worked with thousands of addicts and families over the years, people with, difficult situations and poor mental health that drive them to addictive behaviors and so on. And, for the most part, people aren't out trying to kill themselves with their drugs. So if by chance you think you're doing heroin and it's laced with something else, and you take as much as you used to when you thought it was just heroin, now it's laced with, let's say, fentanyl. We'll get to that in a little bit of this later on in the story here, later on in the show. That then you're in a really bad situation. Well, so you're talking to me, okay, Yonah, What about heroin addicts? I want to hear from you. Have you ever taken a drug or had a drink or taken something you didn't think was what it was supposed to be and it wasn't a good experience? 416-870-6400. We'd love to hear from you right away. And join us on the show. Devin's going to take your calls. So lacing is a practice for drugs, particularly things like cocaine and so on. It stretches it, right? It takes an expensive drug and it stretches it out. It's all about profitability. In some cases, it's about making the psychoactive effects stronger. So that gets us to this whole discussion about marijuana, about weed, right? Laced weed. So I've been in this game a long time. When I first cut my teeth many, many years ago, decades ago, I was doing street work and often ran into people with issues like PCP laced drugs, different kinds of things sprayed onto marijuana to make it look crystally and make it look and act more potent. Stuff is super dangerous, right? So marijuana can have all kinds of stuff in it. It doesn't just have to be heroin or cocaine that we're talking about. It can be just as simple as smoking a joint that's got stuff in it that you don't think should be there, and it shouldn't be. Like naturally grown marijuana doesn't have all this stuff if it's done properly. No pesticides and so on. But there's things like heavy metals and lead that they're said to have been leaked into the weed as it grows because of the ground. It absorbs through the ground. Fungus and bacteria are things that you can find in marijuana if you're buying it from illicit sources, those that aren't being scrutinized in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, can you imagine? You're smoking a joint and all of a sudden you get really nauseous or sick. Or in some cases it's sprayed with stuff, right? Sprayed with PCP. So PCP's been around since I was a street punk. Been around forever and ever. It's a dangerous, dissociative, hallucinogenic drug. People spray it on marijuana when you get a bad crop because it makes it look crystally, right? It makes it look, oh, wow, look at the crystals on that weed. And then when you smoke it, you get this crazy head buzz, I'm told, right? And then this, very unlike the mellow effects generally of THC and CBD on the average recreational user. So if you're not careful and you don't know where you're buying stuff from, and let's say it's a bad crop, it's likely that it's going to get sprayed or dusted, as they say, with stuff that's going to make it more powerful but not good for you. You're looking to get a marijuana buzz, and the next thing you know, you're dealing with hallucinogenic issues. Right. And when PCP is added, by the way, to marijuana, it causes all kinds of potential delirious effects, right? Significant issues with hallucinations, delusions, confusion, aggression, suicidal behavior, seizures, respiratory issues. I had a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, I was called to an emergency room, which I used to go to often in the day, and found myself, dealing with a person who had been overdosed, a young lady who had overdosed, and her friend overdosed on fentanyl-laced marijuana. Now, that's how fentanyl is very inexpensive, which is why we find it in all kinds of drugs, and we're going to get to that later in the show as well. So marijuana, cocaine, things like that, they're all laced with different things to bring up the potency and drive down the cost. That's just kind of how it all works, right? So cocaine, for example, marijuana sometimes is laced with cocaine, but very unlikely because cocaine is more expensive than weed. So typically when something is laced, it's laced with something less expensive than the drug itself. You following me? So when you look at the effects of marijuana, you look at the effects of different kinds of psychoactive drugs on other drugs, specifically household chemicals and stuff, this now becomes very dangerous. That's why people say, you're better off to buy your weed if you're buying marijuana. You're better off to buy it at a government store, at a store that's somewhat supervised and so on. You have to be careful with what's in marijuana today. Methamphetamine's been found. Ketamine, which is a club drug, is often used to dust marijuana. It just makes it it gets you higher. So lousy weed, when you spray it with stuff or add stuff into it, makes lousy weed just better, right? So some effects of laced marijuana, things you have to be careful of. Using marijuana and experiencing no psychoactive effects at all as a result of significant additions or anything added to the plant. If you're experiencing uncharacteristic feelings of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or other signs of illness, chances are there's something bad in your weed. Difficulty breathing, dizziness, lightheadedness, being able to feel as if things are not exactly real. So suddenly having an effect on you, a trip, if you will, That's just not the same as weed. You should know the difference at this point if you're trying it, right? If you're buying it from a legitimate place, you're not going to have to worry about this kind of stuff. Experiencing uncharacteristic insomnia and so on. Got to be really careful. So never purchase ground marijuana. They say never purchase marijuana from somebody who won't let you look at it first. Never, if you're buying it off the street. And basically just stop buying your stuff on the street. It's not a really good plan. Same thing with cocaine these days. The cocaine that people are buying on the street isn't cocaine. I tested a patient. We had a patient a couple of months ago that I was working with that had an issue with his cocaine, right? And he got arrested, whatever. I sent somebody to pick up what was stashed in his apartment so we could get rid of it before he was released on bail. And we tested it just for the heck of it. And there was about 23% cocaine, and the rest was all garbage, all street drugs, all kinds of chemical stuff found under your sink. So be really careful. If you're going to use street drugs, be careful of the street drugs you use. If you're smoking weed, just buy it from the cannabis store. It's safer, it's easier, and it's legal. You don't have to hide around in a back alley, right? So, when we come back, it's, we talk about getting high on weed and for those that are using cocaine recreationally, but there's a ton of people that use drugs every day just to survive. And when we come back from break, we're going to be joined by my guest, who's the Minister of Addiction and Mental Health here in Ontario. We're going to talk about what the government's doing to try to make this better. I mean, we're losing 17 Canadians a day from the opioid epidemic, and that was in 2020. It's worse now in 2021. So go get yourself a drink. Go do what you got to do. Use the bathroom. It's going to be very exciting when we come back for segment 2. Want to hear from you, 416-870-6400. This is Yonah Budd, 640 Toronto.